deadly blast ripped through Liuzhou, China, killing at least 7. Authorities are on top of the situation. This as Japan announces 2 of its citizens have been held on espionage charges. Plus 2 Singaporeans are arrested for attempting to join ISIS, and an Indian man is killed for allegedly eating beef. These stories are coming up next. This is the Asia Brief. Hello everyone, great to have you here on this Thursday, the very first day of October in 2015. My name is Steve Miller, and again, thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to go ahead and get started with some deadly reports coming out of China. There are infinitely better ways to deal with government gripes than taking to the streets and killing innocent people. But that appears to be what a 33-year-old man with the surname of Wei did in Liuzhou, China. On Wednesday, more than a dozen letter bombs, explosives delivered in packages, detonated throughout the city. The locations included a shopping mall, a jail, supermarket, a rail station, a hospital, and even an open-air market. Photographs posted on China's version of Twitter, Weibo, even showed one building turned into rubble and partially collapsed. According to China's Xinhua news agency, at least 7 have died from the explosions and at least 50 have been injured. One witness told the South China Morning Post he was sitting in his shop when one of the blasts occurred. Quote, "Some windows in my shop broke. I walked outside to see what had happened and was almost hit by a falling window from the 3rd floor. I saw half of a building nearby collapse. We were all very shocked and thought it might be an act of terrorism. All shops were closed and the town is under curfew with police guarding every street. It was very scary with so many attacks in just over an hour." End quote. And it's easy to see how the connection to a terrorist attack can be made, but according to authorities, Mr. Wei was seeking revenge over a healthcare dispute. It is a very pathetic response, for any chance an individual may have at obtaining redress flew out the door once they opted to go down the path of violence, especially in an instance like this, where most of the targets had absolutely nothing to do with the actual disagreement. What makes things worse is that the attack took place on September 30th, right before the October 1st national holiday. Normally, when we hear reports of violent attacks in China, it's usually in the Xinjiang region and part of the ongoing dispute between China's Han majority and the Uyghur minority there. But over the past few years, citizens in other parts of China have taken to violence to try and solve their disputes. In 2013, one person used a homemade bomb to take out a government office, and then another man in a different area of China set fire to a public bus. Look, it's no secret that the courts in China are biased towards the government, and even if one has a legitimate gripe, the chances of getting a fair shake, well, it's slim. But that is absolutely no excuse to use deadly force against those that have nothing to do with your situation. It's a cowardly response, and one, as I said, that has no excuse. Anyone who carries out such actions isn't right in the head. And if they think that this will make any kind of difference, they're sadly mistaken. They need to be locked up, and for a long, long time. However, the event should also be seen as an opportunity to look closely at the events that surrounded them, scrutinizing the details, and make requisite changes to society to ensure they do not happen again. Last week, I mentioned the plight of Sandy Fan Gillis, an American that's been held in China for the past 6 months on espionage charges. Well, it appears she isn't the only one that Beijing has nabbed and is attempting to pin spy charges on. Japan's foreign ministry announced that 2 of its citizens have also been held since May of this year on spying charges. One was taken into custody in China's northeast province of Liaoning, near the border with North Korea, and the other in the eastern province of Zhejiang, near a military facility. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Hong Lei said that relevant authorities had arrested the 2 in accordance with the law for engaging in espionage activities in China. Japanese Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga said his nation was doing everything possible to ensure the pair's release and denied that Japan had carried out such activities. Chinese media have previously reported that fake tourists are spying on Chinese military bases. Really? How are they getting there? What are they exactly spying on? In fact, one unnamed officer told state-run media, quote, "Fake companies or sightseeing tours are often used as pretext by outside entities to approach sensitive Chinese facilities for the purpose of gathering military secrets," end quote. Japan said they opted to go public with the news of these latest arrests since the pair had been held for 5 months. Previous cases where Japanese citizens were arrested were usually quickly resolved. In 2010, 4 people were arrested for allegedly filming a military base, but they were released in just a matter of weeks. Look, every nation has the right to protect their state's secrets, but keep in mind that in China, you can be held for up to 6 months without being charged. So if a case doesn't exist, one can certainly be manufactured during that time, which is alarming since in many cases the accused doesn't have adequate representation and home nation state departments usually only have limited access to those individuals being detained. Well, here we go again. 2 Singaporeans were detained under the Internal Security Act back in August for planning to join ISIS, according to the Ministry of Home Affairs. Authorities say they picked up the men in separate instances. The 2 being detained are Muhammad Shamin Mohammed Sidek, who incidentally was previously convicted for inciting violence on social media, and the second individual, Muhammad Harith Jilani, which, if you believe the claims, was radicalized by online propaganda. Shamin had been espousing support for ISIS while he was being detained for his earlier crime, which prompted him to be picked up this time. He also said that upon his release from the arrest, he'd still pursue attempts to join ISIS. The government says that both men were self-radicalized through online media, which, let's face it, ISIS excels at. But it also reinforces the point I made in yesterday's Asia Brief podcast, that nations can hit all the hard targets related to ISIS that they want and even cripple the financial infrastructure, but until they understand the psychology of ISIS and the environment that has allowed the group to prosper and grow, they won't be able to shut it down. Governments need to fundamentally understand what makes ISIS so appealing and address that sector of society if they are truly ever going to eliminate ISIS. Reports have come in from India that a 50-year-old man was beaten to death and his 22-year-old son was severely injured after it was rumored the family had been eating beef. The son was taken to a nearby hospital following the attack on Monday and was listed in critical condition. The senior superintendent of police said preliminary investigations revealed a statement from a local temple about the family consuming beef was made, which then spurred the attack. The temple's priest had been picked up for questioning, but a direct link to the temple has yet to be made. The victim's daughter said, quote, "They accused us of keeping cow meat, broke down our doors, and started beating my father and brother. My father was dragged outside the house and beaten with bricks," end quote. News that police had detained some didn't sit well, and about 500 protesters clashed with police over that incident. Feeling threatened, an officer apparently fired his weapon to disperse the crowd and hit one protester. Police have yet to confirm that the officer's weapon did in fact hit that protester. In the Hindu religion, cows are sacred animals. I understand that. I respect that as a belief. However, what I don't respect are lynch mobs that act on rumors. Furthermore, anyone who carries out acts of violence in the name of religion lacks critical thinking skills and is nothing more than a mindless sheep. One's freedom to practice religion ends when it impacts another's human rights. Well, my friends, that will do it for me today. If you have any thoughts on any of the stories I share in this podcast or over social media, please take a moment and let me know. I'd love to hear from you. The Asia Brief is a special feature of the Asia News Weekly podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, please share it with your friends, and if you haven't, subscribe. Subscribing is free, and when you do, the next episode is delivered automatically to you. You can subscribe on our website, asianewsweekly.net, or in your favorite podcast application. You can also keep up with more news from the region by following Asia News Weekly on Facebook or Twitter. And if you have any comments, questions, or feedback, be sure to drop us a line. That email address is podcast@asianewsweekly.net. Thank you so much for joining me, and until next time, remember to be true to yourself and to always be awesome.